Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Lorne Barando, and I'm going to be giving our third webinar from the International Virtual Reality Professionals Association. And I'll be covering virtual tours and avatars. It's kind of the methods, and I'll cover a couple of the best practices. So let's go ahead and just get started. Topics I'll cover are, the avatars and virtual tours. What's the purpose of them? How are they used? And where are the sources that we get these from? Green screens or 2D character animations. And then I'll look also at what I'm calling video in situ. And that's where you're shooting a panorama with a camera and rig, and you have a modern DSLR. So you're just switching to a video mode, capturing a piece of video, and then now you're going to stitch that all together. I'll talk to what the challenge is of meshing those two different products together. Then I'll look at what's going on in the gaming industry or kind of in the Unity, 3D, Unreal Engine, things that aren't necessarily directly useful or usable in our virtual tours, but interesting to watch to see what's coming. So why do we use avatars in virtual tours? First and foremost, they enhance a sense of presence and engagement. They give a person more of a feeling of being within that space. And the more you can engage them in the virtual tour, the better the understanding, the better they absorb what the information or purpose of that virtual tour is. It's also a very efficient way to provide information and context. Is it a real estate or a museum? Is it a facility? You can talk about the features. And it's a little bit easier sometimes if you have a good video production process than dealing with a bunch of script that's got to be typed in and controlled with code. You're just dealing now with video segments. You can also personalize the experience if you're dealing with a children's museum and you want to have the avatar, childlike or more cartoonish, so that again, it's more engaging, makes it more familiar to the user, increases that connection that they'll have with your virtual tour. And also another very exciting feature of avatars is the ability for live performances now. As the bandwidths and capabilities of recording devices increase, you can start to remotely operate and populate your virtual tour. You might be, for example, if you go to the Smithsonian museums, they'll have in front of some notable exhibits a curator or subject matter expert on a video screen with a webcam there to answer questions from kids that might come up or people that want to know about it. In a virtual environment, you could have the same thing where the curator, subject matter expert can drop in and answer questions. So the easiest method of dropping in video into virtual tours or video hotspots is green screens, just recording the person in front of a green screen and then using chroma key and most programs will do this. These are coming out of KRPano, or you'll see the implementation here in just a second. They're being done in KRPano. And I've included the file sizes, the size of the video panels that are being played. They're just a flat panel, or like a sprite would be dropped in the virtual tour. You scale them and you can distort that hotspot, rotate them in 3 directions to get them to align right. And you'll see that even with, as you increase in the quality, you go from something that's very, very small, it's been really exported out at very low quality, to a little more higher things you might get from an online source. You still will have problems with green edging or the green screen, the cast that'll come back onto the character. So these are limited. They're fast and easy to do, but they're limited in it. And I've included some links here, and I've dropped this presentation into the chat. But I'm not going to go into the workflows or processes for how these are done, but you can take a look at, if you want to know about chroma key, how you shoot green screen, the proper distances to have the screen, the types of lighting. There's a link there at the bottom of this slide that's a very, very good one. Also, I'm going to talk about as you progress from left to right here, if you're trying to chase photorealism, you're trying to drop a character in a presenter and have them match perfectly, it's difficult. And sometimes it's not necessary. The Simpsons effect, where the cartoon characters have 4 fingers instead of 5, and they're skin tones are purposefully off. So you don't try to, in your mind or the user's mind, process, is this part of the virtual tour? And so the last two examples here get into that. I'd also, if you become interested in the 2D animators or character animators, which can really output because they can motion track, you can sit in front of, like an Adobe character animator and just talk and move your hands, and it'll capture all that motion and export it out as an MP4. The one that you'll see here in this tour took me about an hour, and I hadn't used Adobe Character Animator before. So an hour to learn it, export out the thing you'll see here. But Blender is also a wonderful tool, far more powerful in a lot of ways. So what I'm going to do now is just switch over to a browser. This I'm using as a background. This is another module from the Smithsonian Air and Space. This is the Wright brothers, and I'm just dropping characters into it, and I'll proceed through these. I'm going to go ahead and zoom into this. This is a green screen resource that comes delivered with KR Panel. It's one of its examples. It's a very small, very quick, very useful to play, with. But I'm going to go ahead and just click on it, and you'll see it play, and it's in a loop, and you can see the green edges and casting, and as the space in his arms, it becomes distracting. Zoomed out, it's not as bad. Other issues, obviously, there's no shadow at his feet. I purposely placed him, a wall, he gets lost. So this is kind of an example of, it's video, so you got to stage it, have the person, where are they going to stand? The lighting is obviously off on this as well. But one thing that's noticeable is I do have control over it. I can turn him off, and that's a feature that you'll see that as users, as you introduce these avatars and they start to talk for 20, 30 seconds, they may say something like, oh, there's a pair of statues in this exhibit. People are going to want sometimes click, stop it, turn and zoom in and look at the statues, and then come back and, oh, what else can you tell me about? So that being able to control it is important. You're noticing as I use this, another issue, this is a flat panel that's been just dropped into the scene. I'm clicking on it to interact with it, but it's square. I can click on it over here and interact with it. But if I've zoomed in, I'm reading this text and I want to pan the image, I can't pan the image. So the way in which you integrate it is important, not just the quality. So I'm going to jump now to the next version. This one is an autoplay. I don't have to click on it. Some people may not know that they have to click on it. It's a little bit higher quality, but I'm still seeing a green cast here on the legs. But I've dropped it in, and it's in a location where the shadow of the feet isn't quite as obvious. But I suspect a big improvement would go in this frame by frame, process it a little bit, pull some of that casting, maybe darken that edge. So try to blend it in a little bit further. One thing that, as far as the integration, when I dropped the person into the scene and they went to the scene, and then now I have an autoplay, there was a lot of other things moving on here. I may have not caught their attention. So a little bit better refinement is in this scene. I've turned off the controls. There's something that would have highlighted on a bike. There's nothing in the scene. All the hotspots are currently turned off. And demonstrating that now I've taken this character. I still haven't taken care of the focus area or the trigger area of it. But here now, he's sitting there. I've purposefully, it's a historical museum. I've, added a little bit of a pencil aesthetic to it, run it through something like Filter Forge in a Photoshop, right? Taken the video, broken it up into frames, and then just batch process it with some type of a processing that, yeah, I'm not trying to fool you now. And I've added a play button that's a little more accurate, a little more obvious. They can turn it on and off and look at things. And it'll also go away, and then the controls for the scene will come back on. He'll disappear, and the video hotspot has not just been turned off, but removed from the scene now. And so it's not in the way. So that sequence in which you introduce the video, how it's able to be controlled is just as important, I think, as the quality of it. One more now is going in that direction of not trying to do photorealistic. In the next scene, it's a children's museum. I'm introducing the Wright Flyer, really nice high resolution panorama. I can zoom in and see all kinds of good detail. I've got this character that's been created in Adobe Character Animator, took about an hour, and I'll play it. I don't know if the video will play for you, and it's just me talking. I'm not using a mic or anything like that. So this is just as rough as can be. Click on it. And so that the motion that it was picking up is my motion, just sitting in front of the camera, doing it. And then it'll go away here, disappears. So then the controls come up. So one more scene example I'll show you, but I'm gonna hop back to the presentation now, just to kind of show. Those are the 4 examples that I showed you, where increasing the quality of the green screen doesn't mean just file resolution. It means, how do you place it in the scene? How did you think about it? People will talk about scripting. The technology gets you off focus from the story. So where is the person going to stand in the scene? How are they going to talk? How long are they going to talk? Are they going to move their hands? How far are they going to move their hands? There's a lot that goes into it to create a good green screen. Now, the other much more satisfying if it's done correctly, but also difficult to do, is the in situ stuff, or where you shoot a panorama with a camera, lens combination, rig, and ideally you just switch to video mode and shoot. And I'm going to show you a best practice example second. I'm going to start off with something I produced, which is not a best practice anymore, but it was back in 2018, a program called Live Pano. And what I've done, Live Pano doesn't work anymore in KR Pano, but I went and just took the video, dropped it in as a distorted hotspot, moving it, doing the best I could. And let's go ahead and I'll just hop back. So I'm going to show you 3 examples. The first one I'm going to show you is what's the challenge to how you do this. So to this one. So you can see this is, it's a nice panorama. I'm in the front office, the owner introducing to the facility. Because in these scenes, if you try to do studio lighting, ideally I would have blocked out some of the upper floodlights in the lobby, and but I had to adjust that in post in Live Pano. Those adjustments no longer work, so you're just seeing the straight. And this was shot with a Nikon D850 using the Nikkor 14 to 24 millimeter lens at 14 millimeters. You shoot the panorama, 13 total, 1 up, 6 at 45, 6 at 45 down, if I remember right. And then swing. This was shot on a 360 precision adjust head, which is a pretty nice heavy head. And you swing back around, drop the camera horizontal. You've planned this ahead of time, so you know that when you switch to the video, alignment or position, the person's in, and you just switch to video. But you can see from the edge if it's not masked, and even with the best of putting it in there, it's not going to stitch without being distorted, pulled into like a PT GUI and Mystica kind of a thing. And the color grading, I got a color grading issue, because even with the same camera and lens, when you switch from photo to video, you automatically switch the geometry, the lens parameters, if you will, because you're now cropping in. You're not going to export out the same resolution, but worse than just not exporting out the same resolution, you've got some curvature to where your image is now distorted in 3 dimensions, and you're not going to be able to just go and tweak that and warp. You got to stitch that. And the color profiles are pretty difficult. Though I wasn't able to download a trial version of Mystica, and it's not a version I'm familiar with, but in looking at tutorials and workflows, that seemed to be the best method right now, is a PT GUI Mystica workflow combination there. It's got some very powerful tools for stitching, obviously the PT GUI side. and very powerful color matching tools. So let me go back now. If it's done, this is an example of a best practice. This is Circus 360. And again, the links are in there. One of the technical challenges to dropping video into scenes is when they have an audio attached to them, a lot of browser security will not let you autoplay that. A person has to do something. They have to click. In the examples that I've placed online in the Wright brothers, if you go to the scene with the lady that auto starts, she won't auto start. If you drop into that scene, you have to advance from the previous or next scene, and that button has that action. That's what's happening here. When I click on the continue, I'm telling the browser it's okay to play to play this because it won't auto play. So that's just a subtle,
I'm thrilled
technical
to welcome you all to the Ellison virtual show.
Playing in it now. Notice I can't stop it.
Our fantastic teams have been inspired to embark upon an alternative creative journey. It's
natural to want to stop it, but you can see, through a really beautifully done. There's no visible edge. The shadows are done correctly. Notice also, though, that the person is standing slightly behind the doorway. So a typical problem that you would have with the person's face being
share our passion by inviting you
being blown out
the home of
is being done by the way that they're shooting this video. I didn't talk to these people, but it's pretty obvious to me that that's done by design, to be standing a little bit back in the doorway, to be using this doorway as well. And let me I'll quit that. And I could play this one.
Welcome to Metro Aviation.
But I'm not gonna play that. It's terrible now. I'll get to this one in just a second. So let me get back to here to just kind of to reinforce. You can see the mask in this the trade show version. I've placed the square video. It's cropped. I cropped it down a little bit so you could see it. But on top of that is the mask. You can see the transparency layer in Photoshop. That's how they're handling this brutal edge. They're still doing some wonderful color matching, though, because you can't get around the color matching. Now, I did want to show you, in playing around and kind of doing R&D on this, I kind of ran across what I thought was an interesting process, and that's using the new AI tools for masking. And I used Photoshop's cloud-based one for this, and just a macro where you take a video, break it into frames, and then pull it in, and using that that cloud-based AI tool, you just pull out the shape. And in this case, because I'm using the Circus 360 the video, and I pulled out the person, and I'll go back to Wright brothers, and I'm just going to advance to the next scene, and you'll see here. Okay, so I've done nothing in the no feathering, no really playing around, just use the default settings. So the video is broken into frames, and then you create a batch where it loads up a frame. You have it select the subject. It knows that it's dealing with a humanoid figure. It traces it out. You lift it a layer, and you just replace the underneath layer with a green. And then you collapse it, flatten it, and then do that for all the frames, then pull it back in, assemble a video, and then pull it back in. And that's what this is right here, is just pulled. Of course, it's not, I have no audio track for it. But you can see that, and you'll see some glitching where, but of course there's not, you can see it right in there. There's some glitching around here. I was kind of impressed with how well it did. And of course, this person's not shot in this scene, but I clearly don't have a green cast over the person. And I'm kind of wondering, if I did this right, and maybe had the person standing in, against an opaque wall and light, this might be a method. I don't know, something to kind of play with. As these tools advance, maybe there's different ways of doing this. the reason that you have to use a green screen is that video doesn't, at least in a lot of the tools, or when you're displaying it, you don't have an alpha channel, you don't have a transparency layer, so you do it by chroma keying. Now let me go ahead and quit that out, and I want to hop back now. One other source of potential imagery is now kind of looking into the gaming world, or future sources where we might get things from. One very impressive example is from Avatar Dimension, and it's dealing with volumetric video. They have a studio in Virginia, one of the larger ones, and people go in there and you're surrounded by cameras, and you have a script, and you're standing there and you talk, and it captures not just your motion but the textures, and in a process they output an MP4, sorry, a 3D MP4, and that I'm not sure what their exact process is, but I believe it's dropped into like a Unity 3D or a Unity engine. And I'm going to show the example here in just a second. It's the center object, and as you rotate around, you're seeing a skybox, or you're enveloped by this environment. A little different than a virtual tour in that how would you move about it? How would you have the person not the center of focus? But still a very powerful technique. And I can see that if you could drop this into the more 3D Vista Tour or Pano 2VR or something like that, and now have all of the power of interactivity and stuff, it's a very cool solution. Let me just go ahead and pop over to it. Again, you have to have a sequence. You can't just start playing things. So
hello and welcome to COCA, the Center of Creative Arts.
I can't turn it off,
Executive Director.
But
well, actually, I'm Kelly's hologram.
See, I can see
and
all the way
it's
around
to offer you this virtual
the object
of COCA's beautiful expanded facility.
But a pretty cool,
is to enrich
the fact that this is playing as a 3D object. I got the audio tracks and stuff.
Creative home.
It's a pretty cool technique. And then so you can hop around rooms, and in each room you get people that can introduce you. So I'm going to go ahead and quit that off. The last thing I want to show you is what is referred to as Metahumans. I'm showing you one from Unreal Engine, and a really fun program to play with called Metahuman Creator. And I have the link here at the bottom. You can get a free account, and you can go on there and play. I don't have the Unreal Engine, so I don't have that gaming or development engine. So, the scripted or all the motion capture, that I don't have anything to put it into. But I was sitting there playing around with it. I'm just going to play this. It's a video from it, and it's just a screen capture of playing around with. I'll go ahead and click. Oh, that's right. It's not going to play in this one. Let me quickly start. Hang on a second. Yeah, I put it into a PDF, and I forgot that PDFs don't play videos. So just give me a second here. Are you still seeing it in presentation mode, hopefully? I went full screen, but.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Okay, so clicking on it here, this is just a screen capture where I have pre-canned facial expressions, and this would be done as like a Photoshop timeline or a movie. You would strip, piece these all together. It would do full motion capture. It does poses, and this would all be exported out similar to a motion capture, as a as a 3D MP4 or as assets to be put into a full animation program like Maya, things like that. You can see the level of detail that you've got in the models. This is not something that it's plug and play into virtual tours, our stuff right now. But as it advances, the gaming world, the Unity 3D and stuff, and the virtual tour stuff, they will start to cross over. But that is the end of what I wanted to cover. Go back to the PDF. Yeah, that was the end of what, and I wanted to kind of end early, and hopefully open it up to kind of questions and answers, get people to chime in. Video is not my area of expertise, so I definitely would love to find the workflow, the ability to record and to drop people in without quite the challenge that you see right now with this. But I'll go ahead and just open it up to if there's any questions. And
okay, so I've opened up conversation ability for every one of the attendees. You'll have to unmute your mic to actually ask a question, but I look forward to any comments or input that anyone would have here. Please feel free to go ahead. Okay.
I guess I'll ask a question. Is there any people out there that who are in attendance who have used the Mystica PT GUI workflow, and have you been able to achieve reliable results of dropping video in? Because it sure seemed to me and going out and looking for a solution that the best practices and the other ones, it took a lot of effort. It took a lot of planning to do it. This isn't something that to drop in photorealistic people into a virtual tour is very easy. I was surprised that I didn't see a lot more examples of it being done. And I know that it's been attempted for quite some years now. I remember the tea shop, the KR Pano. I tried to find it and I couldn't find it, but there's a really cool tea shop when Live Pano first came out that they had, but really has not been a lot of progress on it. And I'm wondering if some folks out there who are better with video might know why.
Lauren, I noticed that Roberto's unmuted. Roberto, do you have a question?
No, I was hearing, but no question about the green screen.
Or any comments at all?
Somebody's asking about turning on the chat.
Oh, the chat. Is the chat working?
I put the presentation, this PDF, in the chat, and it has these links to these examples and resources. So
There is also a PDF in the chat.
yes, you should see it in the chat.
Okay, good. No, just one question is when you in the last part, this one you have on the screen, the Coca, how the girl is real.
Yes. Let me go ahead, and this is a link to the company doing the work, Avatar Dimension. And you can see on my screen, do you see there's a picture of their motion capture studio.
Yeah.
Right here. And so it has a tremendous array of cameras and LiDAR measuring. So they're capturing in real time in 360 all the way around you the geometry and the textures, and then they are doing the point cloud work and the rest of that and polishing it up. I don't know how much they have to polish it up, but they definitely are capturing in 360. And that's so the people are real, and that workflow is pretty attractive, where you're using the actual subject matter expert, or if it's a museum and it's been donated by somebody, it's kind of nice to be introduced to museum by that person. It's pretty attractive to clients. I've had them ask that a number of times, and it's just hasn't been an easy thing to do.
Yeah, because I saw when you show her, now I see the line on the floor. It means you turned around
It's
it. Around her.
17:30.
So you can show her also behind, as we saw before.
Yes.
Yeah. That was for that reason I asked it was real or not. Because if real, you have to do something as you are showing. Otherwise, if it's not real, there is no problem for the capture.
Yeah, there's a lot of the planning, regardless of whether you're doing green screens or motion captures, it's still back to storytelling. What are they going to say? How long do they say? What are their movements going to be? And I would suspect that when you start capturing in 3D, you do have to start to think a lot more about how the person's dressed, how they're going to move around. It's a very powerful process to have the person. I would love, I really don't know how you would create a virtual tour where this 3D asset is not the center of the virtual tour. They're off to the side, or they travel with you, or could they greet you in a room and then you see them walk out of it.
Did you use a rig with many cameras?
They have a studio where they're doing this. When I'm doing the examples that I showed you, and I believe the trade study show as well, is just a single DSLR camera on a panoramic head. So stitching is a major part of the process for these.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, so just one thing on the color grading issue, being more of a video guy. If you use that route, a good method is the ACES color flow. If you're if you're doing the video part, you can use the photos as a backplate and then use ACES in After Effects or Premiere to really get a pretty good match.
Okay, I was wondering
that color
about
grade.
that. So that's you actually just take the color profile or the color. Like if you're in Luminar Neo, or Luminar tools, they have that mood, and that's just they're capturing that color look, and then you use it as a profile.
Well, so when you get the ACES config and then load it into to either one of those tools, then what you would do is you basically I typically do my grading in After Effects, so I'll basically have like an adjustment layer on top of the one clip, and then all you do is when you put it to actually ACES is now native, which is great, but I was doing it before it was native to Adobe, and you basically just put in whatever that footage is, and then you put in whatever the working space is, and then you do the same for the other camera. And it's how Hollywood's been matching for a few years, but it's come a long way, and it's a great way, because being somebody like myself who uses the tools that I can get a hold of and often has to match a a GoPro to a Sony, to a Canon, or whatever I may have, or whatever shooters I may have to hire to help me out. But it's pretty amazing. That used to be such a pain and almost impossible. But now it's not such a task.
Has that advanced in the last like two years or so, you think?
Yes, definitely.
And would you agree that I'm not a video person, but in looking at the various tools out there, it looked to me like After Effects was, if you're going to do this, pro, After Effects was the tool for color grading. It sure seemed to be.
I get a lot of grief for it, actually, but it's the way I like to do it. Maybe, I don't know if that's just because, I think just because of layer, I think really it's just because of the way it's suited to layering. It feels more like Photoshop, so it felt more natural to me. Of course, what's taking over color grading now is DaVinci Resolve. For video people, I get a lot of grief because I refuse to switch over to Blackmagic's
That's
tool. But
the DaVinci Resolve, I've been playing with that. It's nice because it's it's a free tool, but I also
Sure.
noticed that some of the VR features are locked unless you get, the dongle.
Oh
or
yeah.
You do have
Yeah,
to.
it's nice to try it out, but unless you're ready to commit, which I'm so committed to the whole space of Adobe now with various, from plugins to scripts and everything else that I use in there. I tell people, I'm like, it's too much of a hassle to try to switch at this point. But I love the idea that it's node based and everything, because everything is kind of heading in that direction of being node based software and being a 3D guy like myself. Then, obviously I'm really kind of attuned to the node system, but yeah, so but yeah, the ACES workflow works anywhere. You can do it in DaVinci too.
Okay, I'll have to look at that. Yeah, it'd be nice to, as we would like to come up with some recipe style tutorials. After Effects is obviously a product that a lot of people in this community have access to, whether they're using it or not. They're paying for that all apps Creative Cloud plan, which is
yeah, sure. And it's very, very friendly to 360 editing and stitching and whatnot too. So it's definitely nice. All my 360 stuff, I tend to take video more of I'm a motion person, so I like to take videos. So if I have somebody talking, I'm just going to stick them in the scene. And
you're doing 360 video. That's your okay.
But very very low, kind of low grade stuff. Half the time it's been 10 years I've been doing it. Half the time I give it to somebody just because I want something to experiment on.
Okay. Yeah,
because nobody wants to pay for it.
We'll eventually start, we'll do another seminar, a webinar on 360 video, and probably start talking about all of the interactivity that you're starting to see, hotspot tracking, and really some of the pretty cool stuff. It seems like there's a crossover in the tools a little bit.
Yeah. Well, in my eyes, it's I don't know how it gets to where it's not so much work that it's too expensive for clients to pay for it, unless you come up with a way to do it through an Unreal or Unity and basically use these, Metahumans obviously being a branch of the Unreal Engine ecosystem. And then that way you can use programming to make it a lot more interactive and basically create a web app where, there's no problem with starting and stopping video. You basically got a video game inside a real, environment.
I've been curious why that hasn't happened yet, because you're right.
I know.
The Unreal Engine or Unity 3D they make interactivity really kind of simple. That's the whole point of them. And the things you struggle with in a web environment are done easy. But is it the distribution? That who really has a headset versus a phone in there? I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But thank you very
really
much for the color grading. I'm going to go look at the ACES process and kind of search around, and because I'd like to come up with a recipe level, step 1, step 2, step 3, because a lot of if you get into trying to adjust color profiles or doing things like that, and you're not a video person, or pull up DaVinci Resolve and try to do some color grading on it without reading the manual, and boy, you're just lost.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It's not for the faint of heart, but it, like I say, and I can't describe this process that well because I've been doing it, my certain way for the last year or two, but it's native now inside of Adobe and Premiere. So you can actually choose to be in the ACES workspace. And like I say, I don't know how step 1, step 2, step 3, of that flow, because I've already got a config file, embedded into my scripts, and I just load that up from basically an effect that's in there on an adjustment layer. Actually, it just loads it in automatically anytime I add a adjustment layer, basically. But yeah, it's not it's really not intimidating though, because it tells you, hey, this is what's the color profile? You know, click that drop down box. It gives it all the options. What's, you know, and if you're doing a certain kind of grade on it, you know, even better. I mean, you can set it however you want, but typically, you know, for this, you'd be just choosing it to modify it toward an sRGB space, and then you're right there ready for both images being graded in harmony.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Yeah, I noticed Mystica had some automatic color matching tools in it as well. So I'd be kind of curious to see how it works. And definitely you were mentioning that you get templates, you get, in my case, this process of using an AI tool to lift the person from the scene. It's just a Photoshop action that I've got. And that'd be something that, you know, as a community, we could start place that up there where you could pull the action down. A lot of this can be automated and get the person, get the content creator back to the story and not into trying
to not the technical.
Yeah, because this stuff, it gets technical and you get lost in it and you get kind of frustrated. But
I'm curious, have you tried the did you try the Photoshop beta that came out the other day?
I do. Yeah, I've been using it for a bit, and it's funny. I love it, and then I'll turn it off. I'll get all upset with it because it is definitely a beta. And then I'll bring it back. And I noticed something different is that not the beta version, but the current most stable version of Photoshop, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, I don't know when it happened, all of a sudden it's taking forever to load. If you quit Photoshop, and what's the version here? It's the 2023 version, their last stable version. It takes almost a minute and a half or so to load. And I think they're just trying to get me to finally switch to the beta. But it's powerful.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it's funny. Well, they put that little, you know, bar that's in the beta and is now in the main. They just did an update, and it's got somewhat of a it's not generative, but some of the new automated like adjustment layers that we've seen in the beta over the past year are now integrated into the primary stable version. But yeah, I'm not is the fact that Sensei has been in Photoshop learning from us for, I don't know, a decade. I'm unimpressed by the generative fill.
Yeah, I was using for just pulling the lifting the shape there. I'm using the beta, the old, or the last stable version of it. One of the reasons that I haven't used the beta is the video export or video. I still like to use Photoshop every once in a while just to quickly crop or play around with video. It's been difficult. They've got some bugs with it. If you've been using Photoshop and you try to export out video and it just sits there and hangs forever, write me a message and I'll tell you how to fix that. That's
okay. Yeah, I gave up on that 10 years ago.
It's an easy one to fix now. It's really kind of shameful, but just write me a separate email and I'll tell you how to fix that. Is there any other questions?
Hang on, let me just answer a few of the questions that have come up. One having to do with chat apparently is not working for attendees, and I apologize. I don't know why. Apparently, we're not able to turn that on when we're recording a webinar.
Here, I can have a way to fix, not to fix that, but what I'll do is I'll load the PDF to my server here, and then I'll just provide a link so you can download it. It'll just take a second. So go ahead and just keep answering.
Right. And then as for, will this be available as a recording? Yes, it will be available on demand. So you get to hear it from the very beginning. We'll actually, all you have to do is follow the same link you did to get here after we're done shooting this or recording this, after it's had a chance to render. So later on today, just follow the same link you did to get into the webinar, and you'll be taken, or you should be taken to the recording. I will also be sending out an email, before too long, that will just remind everybody of that ability to view the presentation on demand. And let's see
I cleared off my desktop, so I'm not really sure where the PDF is. Can we post the PDF on our website?
Yeah, but it might be a little bit difficult for people to find that. When I'll on the website, we'll make note that the presentation is now available on demand, and we'll include a link to the PDF in that. That'll be taken care of in the next couple days for sure. Maybe
Yeah,
later.
sorry about that. We'll figure out why we can't use the chat, or why we can't.
Yeah, I thought it was for sure turned on.
Yeah, it says
I'm not sure it's possible.
I've placed it, but it says it's only available to the panelists.
Yeah. Okay, so if everyone can see the Q&A, perhaps you want to just maybe try to create a new question and add that to the question. That might work. All right. Let's see if there was anything else in here. All right, Juan has some experience with this, and Juan, go ahead, unmute your mic and actually pop in.
Hi, Lauren. Hi,
Hello.
Scott. Congratulations for your presentation. So I've been doing green screen chroma key and blue screen chroma key, and I have noticed the blue one option gives me better results since the blue color has less reflection, and the chroma effect, the edges, are a lot less contaminated and clean.
Okay.
So I asked the person to avoid the blue colors in their clothes. Only if the person has blue eyes, I use the green option. What do you think about the blue chroma key option?
That's a good point. I ran across an issue where the third character that I'm using, where I put a bit of a texture on them, it was kind of a sepia tone, and I'm using a green screen, and all of a sudden I'm getting a transparency that I couldn't figure out initially. I just went ahead and placed them on a background and fixed it that way. But you're right. The green and the green and blue are used differently. I read that typically blue will be used at night a lot, and green will be in daylight. But I haven't played around with the blue screens, but I'll have to try that. But that's a good tip. And I'm just curious, you're using these in virtual tours?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm using 3D Vista, and I'm using mostly blue chroma key option. And I think, the edges are less contaminated because I have tried with the green ones, and, those work also, but if you zoom in, you can notice exactly what you were showing us.
Yeah.
But with the blue one, I'm getting better results.
Couple questions for you. In 3D Vista, what do you limit yourself to an amount of time, or video file size? What do you typically, how many minutes does a person talk to, and what do you typically have as far as a file size?
Yeah, what I tend to do is I record in 4K in vertical position, and then I just change inside in 3D Vista the way that I need to have the person inserted, and then I use a software that is included in the Mac computers, which is the iMovie, and export it for web, and then I use JPEG Mini.
Okay.
We actually compress the video too. And then I use the video optimization inside 3D Vista, so you can compress it even more. And I'm not, depending on the length of the video, but I don't recall exactly what was the file size, but it runs smoothly.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't done any experimenting, but that's a good process. I forgot to mention that when you export out of Photoshop, that's not necessarily the best tool for minimizing or crunching a video down. I've used the JPEG Mini on stills, and I've been pretty impressed with what it can compress. I'd forgotten that it can do video as well. That's
Also, there's this other software that I don't exactly remember what is the name. I'm gonna try to find out to see what is the name of this other software, which is a free one. I'm gonna give you that information just in a minute, but it is also a really good one for compressing video, and it's a free one.
okay. Yeah, there's a lot of I did talk about file formats, and I hadn't checked recently, but I think there's some browsers that don't support an MP4, or I'll typically produce the videos that I'm going to drop in as an MP4 and a WebM. And
I just found the name of this software is
Yes.
Handbrake.
Ah, yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah, for compressing or for compressing videos. I've used it.
What do you, Scott? What do you typically have as your preferred format for videos that you're going to drop in, or what formats do you use?
MP4 in my case.
Okay, MP4. I do in a KR panel. You have a piping capability, so you can have multiple formats. I'll typically do a WebM and then an MP4. The WebMs are a little bit lower compression, end up being a little bit nicer file size. I know they play on natively or whatever on Chrome, but is MP4 now fully supported across everything so that you can just deal with MP4s?
I haven't had any problem with it. I don't know if something changed, but I use that software, that format, and it's working across all platforms as far as I know.
Okay. Yeah, it might have. It was a while back that they weren't, but it looks like everybody's supporting it now.
I know typically you know, if it'll play the MP4, it'll look a little better, but you'd want to have a WebM like backup.
Okay.
Depending on, so that way, like just from web development, I know that if we're hosting video locally, then we have an MP4 and then a WebM programmed in to be able to play on slower connections or with, you know, certain browsers, but most browsers are support MP4 these days.
Okay.
But file size, you're going to be better. The WebM should play smoother because it's going to be a much more compressed file. And there's actually a free plugin in Adobe Exchange for being able to just export from Premiere or After Effects or in Media Encoder. You can export in a WebM format.
Yeah, I have that too. I was kind of disappointed.
But Handbrake's great. Handbrake's awesome too. That's easier.
That's easier. Do you find that it has a better performance or better compression ratio?
Well, I mean, it just depends on your knowledge of being able to go in and select the right things for your exporting from Premiere, you know, or from After Effects. I mean, knowing what bit rate and you know, what profile to use and stuff like that. You know, I'd typically trial and error to see, but Handbrake, you don't have to worry about all that. So, you know, it's probably better if you're not.
If you're from a development world, do you ever go onto the, you know, like a terminal line and a command line and play with like FF, MPEG or try to do compressions that way?
I do. Well, the only reason, I have with my screen records because I use I guess just I can't even think of the name of whatever program I use to screen record, trying to get a better quality of screen recording stuff. I've played with it a little bit, but I'm not definitely don't have any great tips for it. It's really just been just a little bit, but I definitely know that there's potential there too.
Okay, yeah, the screen records. I used to use QuickTime for that, and then that's not supported now on Catalina or whatever it is. But then they introduced a built-in command option 5 or command option F5, I forget. But that then brings up is it command option 5? No. Yeah, there it is. That's command, shift command 5. And that brings up either still or screen recording capabilities for a Mac. FYI. Any other questions?
Quick comment, actually. I noticed in the chat, if you wanted to try to send the PDF, before you send it, under the two, just click everybody, and then everyone will be able to see it in chat.
I don't have an everybody. I just have host and panelists, Scott, and then Scott and Brian.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Do you have the ability to then download that in PDF and send it out?
Let me try that.
Okay.
All right. So any other questions? And in the meantime, I will try to get this shared to everybody.
If this doesn't work, I can place it on my server. I just can't do it at the moment. But it would just be visualconstruction.com, and then a / and then just 5.27.pdf. When you type that in and hit return, it'll just automatically download the PDF from my server. So I should do that from now on, make it easy. But were you able to do that, Scott, in the chat?
Now I can't see it. I have no idea what's going on here, why I can't send this out. There we go. All right, hang on just a moment. Oh,
Yeah.
I have to switch it to everybody first, and then I can send it. There, now, everybody should be able to see in chat the PDF, and just please download it. And tell me if there's any problems that you are
Yeah,
not.
I see it. Okay, good. Well,
Okay, any other comments or questions on any subject that you may care to speak about from our audience?
okay.
All right. So if there is nothing else, then I guess I will say thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. And
Just Scott, just wondering whether we want to announce the program, potential program, or we haven't got anything to announce yet.
Oh, we do. The next one, our next webinar, is going to be an in-depth look at the Smithsonian virtual tours. So kind of a behind the scene. I'll be covering both the natural history and the air and space. I'll be looking at the traffic that they've realized over the years, experiences. I may have some of the Smithsonian folks dial in, I don't know, but I'll also go at, what is the architecture of them. It'll be a nice presentation if you want to see what is one of the most visited virtual tours over the years. If you want to see the traffic from it and what they've learned, definitely dial in for that one. It'll be a fun one. And I'm going to do something different on the presentation. I'm going to, rather than a PowerPoint or PDF, I'm going to kind of lay the tour out, unassemble it in a gigapixel format type of presentation. If you haven't seen those, they're kind of interesting on how to do a presentation that way. So it'll be an interactive layer that I'll be working on. But you'll have to tune in. It'll be exciting.
And other future presentations will, one of them will be how to create digital doubles, representation of spaces or for various uses. Again, with 360 video and how to produce that, and also how to think about that differently from standard video.
Accessibility will be one coming up.
Yeah.
A really in-depth, that'll be a kind of how-to step-by-step. How do you get a tour, a virtual tour through accessibility requirements, the web content accessibility guidelines 2.2. So not just scanning with a reader, with a device, I mean, just really passing it completely.
Also marketing and business side of doing virtual reality or virtual experiences. So we do have a number of what I think are going to be very interesting programs coming up. But also I would like to hear from any of you, if you want to just pipe in right now, any other suggestions of what you would like to see in the future. Please feel free.
I know I would like to explore the 3D the gaming environment, what they're doing with virtual, skyboxes and VR and things like that, and how they might merge someday. So that'd be kind of a fun one.
In a way, we kind of have that right now with KR Pano's volumetric presentations.
The photogrammetry would be a very interesting one. Whether it's the IVRPA now, I don't know where they've gotten the Blender, using a Blender workflow to create your geometry, and that's a pretty impressive one. The photogrammetry, I'm pretty excited about that area. Because the Matterport, basically, a Matterport based tour without using Matterport. Because all Matterport is doing is pulling in, optical data and converting it to CAD, and you can do that with photogrammetry and Blender, free tools. That'd be kind of a fun one.
Mm-hmm. And just quick question: has everyone been able to access the PDF on the chat, which should be visible to everybody now? If you haven't, let us know. Otherwise, it will be in the announcement of the video now being on demand.
Okay, got it.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.